the story goes that George had called Billy. Billy called George or something. So George returned the call. Billy's on the phone, and he said, George, I can't talk to you right now. I'm in the middle of dinner. And George said the next thing he heard was, Billy said, where's the cornbread? So they got such a kick out of that. And I said, George, that sounds like a song right there.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
So we're talking. And then Billy's talking. He said, we got to do the cornbread like it was already written. Like it was already.
Hey everybody, it's Mike Jeffers, Chicago Jazz Magazine, and welcome to the feature interview for our March 2019 digital issue, of course available at chicagojazzmagazine.com. I am joined here with the owners of Southport Records and all-around incredible artists, Joanie and Bradley Parker Sparrow, but of course we call him Sparrow because it's hipper, it's easier, and that's what he goes by. So guys, I'm so glad we get to sit down and talk and finally get some background on you as a feature interview, but also, before I finish off my intro here, I'm excited because you guys have a incredible new recording with the legendary George Freeman coming out called George the Bomb, of course, featuring Billy Branch. That's a dynamic duo right there. Before we get into talking about all of that stuff, how are you guys? I'm glad you guys made it down here.
Happy Valentine's Day.
It is Valentine's Day.
Thanks for having us.
That's right. Yeah, well, we're recording this on Valentine's Day, so happy belated Valentine's Day to everyone. Before we get into your background, why don't we talk about this new recording a little bit? I mean, you guys have known George Freeman forever, just like everybody's known George Freeman. Everybody loves George Freeman. How many recordings have you done with George? Because this isn't the first one that you've done with him.
We did the first one called Rebellion. The second one is George Burns.
Oh, George
Sparrow comes
Burns.
up with these great titles, right? Like, because he burns. And then we did George Freeman with Chico Freeman.
Right.
That's
his
right.
nephew Chico on tenor sax and
And this is a little bit different.
This is different. Well, you were talking about George wanting to kind of be a little more free at this point in his life and not worry about playing all the chord changes and the standards, right?
I think he just felt like he wanted to stretch out and kind of look at his roots, which would be R&B and blues. Mm-hmm. And sometimes when you're a jazz player, you're playing the same shiny stocking song over and over again. And he wanted to write some blues songs. And he just wanted to do something different.
Yeah.
And with Billy Branch, well, they get along great. And we'll get into some really fun and funny conversations and experiences with those two. But it just occurred to me this would be a great pairing to put them recorded together because they had never recorded together.
And you guys as, record label owners for 35, 40 years now. I was reading on the website, you have over 144 recordings
This
released.
is 148.
148.
Yeah.
I mean, just think about that, 148. But, in this day and age, too, I mean, let's talk about George a little bit. He came up, I remember him telling me, him playing with Charlie Parker, him playing with all the legends, him going to New York. And, I mean, it was incredible, the stories that he has. Mm-hmm. But I think in this day and age, you guys tell me there isn't really a genre anymore of what's jazz anyways, right? It's a mixture of a lot of different styles. So it makes a lot of sense, I think, having Billy Branch and George together because that's just like, well, these are two buddies. These guys are world-class players. Makes a lot of sense. It doesn't have to be blues, jazz, rock, anything else these days. What do you think?
It's funny, when you try to do something like that, you really don't know if the artists are going to get along as human beings or musically.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like the older and younger brother when they're together. So there's a good sense of humor. No one's trying to undercut someone.
Yeah.
Back in the old days, even on Lincoln Avenue, often the blues guys and the jazz guys would be in different parts of the room because sometimes the jazz guys would act like they knew more because they could maybe read fancier chord changes. But the blues musicians were making more money because younger people liked the music more because you could dance to it.
Dance
Right.
to it and
Yeah.
groove.
But
Yeah.
everyone was still drinking and getting along.
Right.
But I think now it's blurred, like you said, including hip-hop and any other kind of music. It's music that depicts your culture, your emotion. Names don't really help.
Right.
Okay.
And I mean,
Labels.
and I think with this recording, and when you think about it, when I was coming up in the 80s, 90s like that, there was the jazz guys, there was the blues guys and everything. But George, coming up in the 30s and 40s and 50s, he was hanging around with all the blues guys, all the jazz guys. They were just playing. And I think that this almost brings it full circle back to the roots, where it's like, it doesn't matter what genre it is. These guys are good friends, great musicians, and they're playing together. So what was the process like picking out the tunes and putting the tunes together for this?
Well, most of it was done over the phone, because George and I have had these long phone conversations our entire relationship. And he'd call me up and he'd say, oh, Joanie, what do you think about this? Let me play it for you. And he'd play it for me on the phone, right? Wait, hold on. Let me get my guitar. And he played number 2 on the CD is called Gorgeous George. It's he calls it a masterpiece.
Oh, wow. If he doesn't say so himself.
He does, and it is. And I said, I love it, and this and that. Well, he had written George the Bomb, the song George the Bomb. He was working on it over a year ago, and when he was at the Green Mill for his annual birthday party weekend,
Which is coming up in April.
Coming up April 12th
Yep.
and 13th, that weekend with Bernard Purdy, and he does the whole thing, Mike Alamana, all the guys. He was working on it and did it on that gig. Then when he came into the studio, he had sort of fleshed it out and got a little more of the arrangement together, and we added Billy Branch. We're singing background vocals, me and John Devlin, and we even got Sparrow to sing, Billy Branch. Billy's playing the harmonica. So every song was chosen carefully. His Homegrown Tomatoes song that he loves, that he recorded on the Live at the Green Mill CD with Mike Alamana, that record. And Mike's happy because he said, now we have the live version, and now you guys have the studio version. Yeah. Right? So it's just been a
So did George write a lot of this, or did Billy, or did they come
George
together?
wrote every song but 2. One is an old song from the Tin Pan Alley era called The Music Goes Round and Round, and it comes out here.
Wherever that is.
And I brought that song up to George a long time ago, and he said, what was that song we were talking about, Joanie? He used to play it when he was in New York at the Apollo Theater.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So this is from way back.
This is from way back, yeah.
30s.
So we did that song. That's one of the non-original song, or a cover song. And Billy did the blues, great blues, Help Me. He did his, that's his sort of feature on the record of his vocal and harmonica. And then they improvised a song called Where's the Cornbread?
Oh, you were telling me about this off camera. I remember this, yeah.
Yeah. So the story goes that George had called Billy called George or something. So George returned the call. Billy's on the phone, and he said, George, I can't talk to you right now. I'm in the middle of dinner. And George said the next thing he heard was, Billy said, where's the cornbread? So they got such a kick out of that. And I said, George, that sounds like a song right there.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
So we're talking. And then Billy's talking. He said, we got to do the cornbread like it was already written. Like it was already a classic. It was already a standard. So we did it at when we did the gig at the City Winery last April, which was sort of our experimental gig to see how everything was going to work. We knew it was going to work.
Yeah.
But, they did Where's the Cornbread Live, which I have up on YouTube now. But when they got to the studio, it was like they were like really into it. It's like they were just sitting on the back porch talking,
really?
and George, when you gonna have me over for dinner, Billy? And where's the cornbread? And you got to hear it. You will hear it.
It was like an old radio show.
Oh, really? So and you captured it all, and they're just.
Yeah.
And the thing about your studio we should mention too is that where you guys record now, it's like in your home, right? I mean, it's like super laid back, so it probably lends itself to actually like somebody sitting there, George and Billy just sitting there, just totally relaxed. They don't feel like they're in a sterile situation.
Yeah, that's nice. That's nice about that, because for so many years when we had the formal studio all through the years of Sparrow Sound Design,
right?
Well, now that we're kind of in our home, we have windows, which Sparrow said he loves. You're in the control room and you can actually look out the window and maybe hear the birds.
It doesn't feel like you're at work.
Right.
I think that's probably a big thing. I think with studios too, I mean, when you go into it, and as an artist, you're in there. I think that's why I love live recordings more than studio recordings, because there's just more of a interaction, and it's just more organic happening. And even if you try to replicate that in a studio, I think just because of the, how enclosed you are a lot of times in those studios, or isolated, or however they're recording it, it doesn't lend itself to like that spontaneity, But I think in
No.
your space, because I've been up there, I haven't recorded there, but it just lends itself. It's like, oh, this is great, man. It's
Well,
totally
and
laid
then
back.
all you got to do is go in the kitchen
Right.
and just lay back,
Yeah.
have a coffee or a beer or whatever you're going to have. One of the things that we did, every song, George would start playing the groove in his booth, in his room, and John Devlin would come around, and because he laid down the bass first with the group, and he'd listen. And I'd say, Louise Everling, I'd say, you got to come and listen to this so you can catch the groove, And they sort of worked every song out that way, just kind of gathered around George
Yeah.
to kind of get his vibe and to see where he was feeling the tempo and the groove, and that really made it work.
It almost reminds me of like, when you get together for the first time or the first bunch of times with like a band you're going to play with or something, you're like, and you kind of all just hanging out saying, I don't know, how do you want to do this? How do you want to do that? So that's kind of the vibe, because I think that's the organic nature, and that's how, great bands grow out of that. So just being able to do that rather than sitting there, here's your sheet music and here's how you play this and how you play that.
No, there was no sheet music involved.
No, I can
whatsoever.
imagine. I can imagine.
Where's the sheet music? You got to check out the temperature of the water.
Yeah, right. So let's talk a little bit more about this recording. So you guys have some shows coming up. It's coming out April 2nd. So this is coming out next month. We're launching this interview, and then of course we're going to have a CD review coming out in April about this. But you guys have several shows coming up in April too. So why don't we talk a little bit about that? Get that all kind of plugged out here. Since
Well,
we're
actually,
talking about it.
George Freeman has several shows
that's what I
coming
mean.
up
That's
in
what
April,
I mean.
right? Well,
Focused
April
around
is
the CD.
the International Jazz Day, and
That's right.
April's the month. April's also George's birthday month.
Right.
He will be 92 on April 10th.
92.
92. So he was just a young man of 91 when we recorded this record. But the Jazz Institute is doing one of their Park District Jazz City concerts on April 5th with George and Billy.
Oh, okay. They're going to put them together.
Yeah, they put them together,
Oh,
which
that's
is
great.
So that's all working together with, this whole thing with the CD release. It just sort of happened that way, which is wonderful, and they're being very, very helpful and supportive of the project, which is very, very kind of everyone there.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So we're going to do, George has that date. I think Margaret Murphy Webb, her monthly
Southside Jazz
Society,
Coalition,
she's got something going on April 9th.
Okay.
And then George plays the Green Mill on April, what did I say?
13th,
12th and 13th,
We'll make sure
Friday and Saturday that weekend.
We'll make sure the dates are correct below.
That weekend, yeah. It's the 12th and 13th. And then we're going to have a CD celebration, Southport Records, when the CD's kind of been baking that month of April, on April 26th. It's a Friday evening from 6 to 9. An early party like we used to do it at Katarina's.
That's right.
We're talking
That's
about
right.
our monthly shows there. At Lang's Lounge, which is a Chicago neighborhood bar on
Since
Southport.
1965.
Since 65 at 3500 North Southport. George will be at the bar to meet and greet,
And
sign
sign.
autographs.
And sign.
We'll be blasting the CD all night. John Devlin's going to come in and play some acoustic
Oh,
guitar and
nice.
sing. We'll
We're
have
going to
some.
move the pool table
Yeah.
Oh, you are?
over
Okay.
against the wall for a while.
We'll
you
have
know
some
what
George the Bomb drink specials,
Right.
right? And
That's like George. First of all, the licensing possibility, the George the Bomb. Are you kidding me? That's going to be the next thing. The guy's going to be a multi-millionaire, like by
When we
by
get Jiffy
June.
Mix for the cornbread. or Quaker Oats.
Quaker Oats. There you go.
Get bigger company.
Well, you know what I love about this though is that he's going to be performing 2-3 times that month,
Yes.
and then just come and hang out with George.
yeah.
I mean,
Exactly.
I think that's a great idea because
Thank
you just
you.
come hang
Yeah.
out. I mean,
He thinks so too.
I bet he does. He loves hanging out.
He said, I don't have to play.
No, you just talk to
Yeah.
people and hang out. I
Yeah,
mean, that's-
Billy can come through, maybe throw a little harp down
Yeah.
there with Devlin. And
So that's
Yeah.
happening. What date?
it's Friday, April 26th.
April 26th,
Yeah.
and it's right across the street from
From the studio.
the studio. Now let's talk a little bit about the studio because you guys